This is wild, as rumors are starting to circulate regarding a new Toronto Maple Leafs target that they could be looking to pursue via trade this offseason, and his name is Nikolai Ehlers. Ehlers seems poised to leave Winnipeg this offseason, and the Leafs could look in, according to multiple rumors and reports, to swoop up the winger. So I'm going to break all it down in this episode, but before we do, if you're a part of the percentage or aren't subscribed to the channel, make sure to hit that button. It would mean the world to Darius and myself. But Darius, we have a lot to go over today, and this guy, his name is Nikolai Ehlers, obviously a part of the Winnipeg Jets, and his name has been involved in several trade talks throughout this offseason and really dating back to last trade deadline. Just in general, he's been a guy of high standard and coveted greatly by the Jets. But now a rumor has emerged, has started to come out in several rumors and reports regarding the Leafs potentially targeting Nikolai Ehlers. And obviously, Nikolai Ehlers is a very good winger, and the Leafs desperately need wingers. And we think about Nick Robertson, who's potentially on his way out. A lot of things go into this. Darius, this player, I really like him. The underrated winger would be great for the Toronto Maple Leafs, according to this article. And I mean, if you're unfamiliar with Ehlers, we're going to dive into it all. He is a left winger and would be an improvement over Tyler Bertuzzi, who just left the Maple Leafs. And he's very, very good. And we're going to get into how he's underrated a little bit. But I want to first ask you, what are your thoughts on all this talk regarding a potential trade, and what kind of framework could work for both parties, maybe even involving a Nick Robertson?
I think Nick Robertson would be the most likely trade piece that the Leafs could offer in return because the Jets will probably need offense back, right? And when you look at comparables, yes, he would be better than Tyler Bertuzzi in terms of point production, but I do wonder if adding Ehlers to the Leafs would be adding too much of what they already have, too much of the same, right? So it could be something where you have to kind of look at both sides, and would this actually help the Toronto Maple Leafs? It would help them in the scoring department, which they need more of, but I wonder if Ehlers is too similar to a lot of the players that they already have on the team. But when you're looking at the trade specifically, like you said, I think Nick Robertson, he wants out of Toronto. I don't think he has too much leverage in terms of, where he's going to go or anything like that, or even being traded. I still think the Leafs are going to try and work on that relationship. But if you have the opportunity to get Ehlers and the salary cap kind of, straightens itself out, maybe you get a third team involved, something like that. Obviously, I think Nick Robertson being the return would be great.
Yeah, and the Jets are still trying to compete, so they're not going to be looking for prospects or necessarily anything like that. But for Ehlers, you can see here, and it's very interesting. A lot of his seasons have been cut short due to COVID, due to injury, all of these different things. But when he's played a full year, he's been very good. And you can see at the bottom here, this is very interesting to note. The Jets team don't seem to realize what they have in Ehlers, who was their fifth most used forward based on time on ice this season. So there's been some speculation and rumors around Jets land that maybe Ehlers has requested a trade internally or really wants to get out of Winnipeg. And if that's the case, it makes even more sense for the Leafs to pursue him, because you can look at this chart from JFresh, Darius. He has 94th percentile projected WAR. Now, the issue is what you just said. He's not a big guy. He's 6 foot tall. He's not super small, but he's he's 6 foot tall. He's not great at defense. He's a bit of a liability defensively, but he has one of the best shots in the NHL, and his time on ice is a projected third liner. Realistically, he would slot into that first or second line for the Toronto Maple Leafs, no problem. He's a very, very good goal scorer. 2 years left at $6 million a year, which is also pretty reasonable given his stats here. 61 points in 82 games. And last year, so he was finally healthy, but we can see that, I don't know, Darius, there's interesting regarding Nikolai Ehlers. So we've seen times where he's very good. We've seen times where he's very injury prone. Obviously COVID a couple of years ago, but
Yeah.
this is a player that when he's healthy, he's one of not the best wingers in the NHL, but a very top tier winger that tons of teams would covet a lot. And when you're talking about a trade for Nick Robertson, I think the Leafs would have to give up a little bit more than just obviously the salary, let alone, but just giving up Nick Robertson probably wouldn't be enough for the Jets. But throwing in maybe a prospect in there or a pick could sweeten the deal for the Leafs. But the question is this a player that the Leafs think propels them? The advanced analytics are great. The actual analytics are great. He's only 27 years old. They could lock him up long term. What do you think?
Again, I think it's a lot of what they already have. And like you mentioned, not great at defense, but this is, an elite scorer. I think he's a really good scorer in the NHL. And when you look at the way that the Jets were using him, it wasn't great. And like you said, like their fifth most used forward, which is crazy because he's a great goal scorer. And I think there were times, obviously he was battling, health issues and injuries and all this stuff the last couple of years. He was healthy last season. But in the years past, he was being left off the power play in certain situations, stuff like that. And he's a goal scorer. So I feel like he could probably have more points on a team that uses him correctly. But that brings me back to what I was saying, that a little bit too much of the same. I don't think he would get the opportunity that he needs on the Toronto Maple Leafs to really flourish at what he's good at, right? Because there's already when you look at goal scorers, you got Austin Matthews, the best in the league right now, right? So he would need more of an opportunity to score goals, and he's probably not even going to get that on, he might play first power play unit, but certainly he would help in the goal scoring department. They need more of that in the playoffs, but I'm not sure that would be the case, at least in terms of playoffs, and the Leafs need help there. So not sure if it's a perfect fit. And like you said, in a perfect world, like it would be great and it would add to the scoring. But also, like you said, if it was Nick Robertson going the other way, that does kind of help the Jets because, you add some scoring immediately and somebody who can play in the NHL and somebody who's going to be hungry. But there would be way more to that trade. You probably need a third team involved, right? It could get a little messy. So nice idea, but I'm not sure it's, maybe in a perfect world.
Yeah, and this one even has, which you might cover in a future video, this is a Marner proposed deal regarding Ehlers and probably Rutger McGroarty. So that's one we'll cover in a future video. But there's a lot of different rumors going around in the Jets, and really the Jets are one of the hot trade targets for other teams around the NHL because of all the assets they have. But you're looking at, I think that's where I'm at as well. Obviously, he's not exactly what the Leafs need. Like, yes, in a nutshell, Tyler Bertuzzi is a worse player than Nikolai Ehlers, most likely at least, depending on who you ask. But for the Leafs, I think they would have rather just re-signed Tyler Bertuzzi than give up assets to get Nikolai Ehlers. That being said, hindsight's 2020 here, and if they want to go out and make a bit of a splash, that would be the guy. And you look, Nick Robertson stats 27 points in however many games. So it's like, I don't know. I would rather have had Tyler Bertuzzi, I think, for this team than Nikolai Ehlers. And if you're giving up assets, then is Ehlers the best player? Maybe not. That being said, let's not forget here, Nick Robertson requested a trade. He was the one who requested the trade. So if they're not getting any great offers, they're getting middling picks, third-round pick, fourth-round pick, might be worth them to add a pick to get a player that will help them win in the 2 to 3 year window they have with OEL and Chris Tanev.
Yeah, and when you go to, the Nick Robertson stuff, he did request a trade, yes, but I'm not sure the Leafs have to honor it at this point in time. Like we saw Jake DeBrusk get or request a trade out of Boston twice, and it came out this week that it was in fact twice, and things got pretty awkward for him. And Nick Robertson has done that here, but he has no real leverage, right, in this situation. And if the Leafs want to, they can hang on to him unless there's something out there that makes sense, right? Like maybe even Ehlers does make sense in terms of on ice, but you'd have to make the money work or anything like that. So it's going to be a very interesting situation moving forward for sure to keep an eye on in that one. And I wonder if, a situation comes forward like an Ehlers trade or maybe somebody around the league that does make a Robertson trade make sense, because right now it doesn't sound like it is. And honestly, again, he has no leverage in the situation. And if the Leafs want, he will be a Leaf next year and we'll play for the Leafs.
Yeah, and Craig Berube wants Brad for living has said here. We're excited to see what Nick can do on the ice next year, especially given time out of Sheldon Keefe's dog cage. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with him and if a trade gets done. And if it does, maybe Nikolai Ehlers could be an interesting target. Let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on all of that. And again, let us know, do you think Nikolai Ehlers is a good trade target? Do you think, like Darius said, maybe it's a bit redundant on this current team? Let us know. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys very, very soon.